Good evening, everyone. Welcome to tonight's live stream. My name is David Matney, and tonight we're going to go over the passage of the great big beautiful bill by President Trump. Now, here's the thing: we're going to be talking a little bit of politics here, so try to keep it nice. But we're going to look at the impact on uh, the housing market with the passage of that bill, because there's some good things for housing in that bill. But with anything, there's going to be folks um, on either side of the issue. So we're not going down that road. So keep it nice in the chat if you would. But if you can hear me okay, let me know in the chat if you so would be so kind. So just make sure I got this new microphone now, so I'm trying that thing out and seeing what's going on with that. And hopefully we'll get somebody there. All right. But we'll go ahead and kick things off. And let's see here. NAR celebrates the passage of the big, beautiful bill. President Trump signed the bill into law on July 4th at the White House ceremony. I don't know if you saw it or not, but there was a flyover and all that sort of thing. So he did it in Trumpian style. But we're going to talk about it. And this is from Housing Wire. I like Housing Wire. I think they put out some good information. Jonathan Delcier, I'm not sure if I pronounced that or not, but the National Association of Realtors, NAR, praised the narrow passage of President Donald Trump's One Big Beautiful Bill Act, a sweeping tax reform measures that includes a slate of real estate related provisions. Okay. And last week, the legislation passed the House of Representatives by a vote of 218 to 214. And that was straight down party lines. So, of course, and then in the Senate, it was a 50-50 vote, and the tie was broken by Vice President J.D. Vance. Hey, Clark is in the house. All right, Clark. Hey, thanks for being on tonight's stream. So thank you very much. I always appreciate when Clark stops in. So awesome. For months, realtors across America have been the forefront of tax reform, making sure Congress understood that homeownership is not only the cornerstone of the American dream, but a foundation for building wealth and strengthening communities. Shannon McGahn, NAR's executive vice president and chief advocacy officer, said in a statement. And that's kind of one thing I want to kind of talk about. Hey, James is in the house. All right. Hey, James. All right. Thanks for stopping in tonight. A lot of folks, when they talk about the National Association of Realtors, a lot of times, a lot of folks throw a lot of shade toward the National Association. But what a lot of people don't realize is that the NAR does a lot of public advocacy on the housing policy and mortgage finance and on property rights. Okay, so it's not just looking out just strictly for the real estate industry. They're looking out for property rights and that sort of thing. And they have a thing called and it's a big lobby group. And I know people, when they hear the word lobbyist and all that sort of thing, it's kind of leaves a icky taste in your mouth. But here's the other thing too, and that is there's no National Association of Homeowners. Okay. And sometimes what these lobby groups have to do is they have to stop politicians from doing. Sometimes you got to stop things from being harmed. So, because sometimes people get an idea and maybe that's not so, there's the law of unintended consequences. So, a lot of times, the National Association is fighting for those types of things too. And then a lot of times, a lot of folks don't realize how fortunate we are in the United States in the fact that we do have a 30-year fixed rate mortgage. A lot of countries don't have that type of financing. They have to reset. And I'm not sure exactly how it works in Canada and whatnot, but Um, I think Denmark and the United States are the only ones that have a 30-year fixed rate mortgage. And that's part of the reason why is because of the government's, subsidizes that because they're trying to encourage that. But a lot of times folks don't realize what we have here compared to other countries. But I just want to kind of, they have a political action committee, or it's called RPAC. And what RPAC is for is it's not just, they're promoting um, both candidates on the left and the right. It's not a Republican or Democrat type of issue. It's who's an advocate for housing. So there's a saying that goes something like, if, in terms of lobbying and that sort of thing, if you don't have a seat at the table, then you're probably on the menu. So it's good that NAR has a voice out there fighting for um, property rights and that sort of thing. Because a lot of times, last couple of years, a couple of things people wanted to put on the chopping block, like the 1031 exchange and the mortgage interest deduction. The last couple of years, that's been kind of on the chopping block. And so that's not necessarily a good thing because there's, hey, that's a way of raising revenue. Okay. But there's some unintended consequences that goes along with that. So um, for months, we talked about that. We delivered that message backed by original research, trusted polling data, and real world expertise of more than 1 million realtors living and working in every zip code in America. Okay. Kind of going back to that NAR. Oh, about back in 2012, I was president of our local association here in Omaha. And what's kind of neat to do when you're the president of the local association, what's kind of neat is they fly you out to DC with all of the state leadership and local leadership. And every year they do this, and the realtors meet with the elected, the delegation. Um, like in our case, the Nebraska delegation, the three congressmen and the two senators, and you get to talk with them, and they hear you out, and you have in Nebraska they even have a breakfast that you can go to, which was pretty cool. But anyway, it's kind of something that a lot of people don't realize that's being done behind the scenes, because a lot of times it's just people think, realtors, oh geez, that sort of thing. But um, the bill included several long sought policy priorities for the organization, including a permanent extension of the lower income tax rates. Okay. Um, And I agree with Clark. We need bills that bring affordability back to entry level home buyers. And that's true too. So, a lot of things in this bill are geared toward investors and things like that. There's some items, but, I agree with you, Clark. And I'm not so sure how you fix affordability. The last couple of years have just been a great big boondoggle. I don't know, a lot of great ideas out there. I'm not sure how to fix it, but yeah, that's and in a market like Atlanta, you guys' price point is a lot higher, and it just seems like the gap between homeowner affordability even in Nebraska has gotten so far out of whack compared to a couple of years ago. So I don't envy the folks that are starting out now, because if they don't um, if they start off behind the power curve and they get, you know, let's face it, you're a lot of the folks go to college, and they graduate from college and they have a degree, and then they can't get a job, and then they're saddled with a bunch of college debt, and they're even further behind the power curve. Or if you make a couple of poor decisions, and face it, that's part of being young, is you make poor financial decisions, then it's really setting things behind the curve. And just in the past couple of years, I think it was the 2024 stats that only 24% of home buyers were first time home buyers. So it's gotten to be a thing where I'm working with folks and they're first time home buyers and they're in their 40s and 50s, which was unheard of, you know, 20 years ago. So I don't know how, Clark, if you're seeing the same thing, but that's, uh, you know, I don't know. And here's the thing, too. I don't know sometimes if government fixes things. I think sometimes government makes it worse. It almost seems like in life, you have to be your own financial first responder. You have to, um, the government just is not going to make your life better, unfortunately. I think folks have good intentions, but you know how that goes. All right. Um, a permanent extension of lower individual income tax rates. Okay. And I think when you know, Clark says, yes, I'm seeing the same thing. Yeah. Yeah. And I don't know, Clark, do you have any ideas on that as far as how you bring affordability back to entry level home buyers? I mean, I'd welcome the idea, but I mean, I don't know. And the the lower individual income tax rates, and a lot of folks on the on the left are concerned about, well, this is going to raise the deficit and like things like that, and that's a legitimate concern because anytime you spend more money and just Congress can't help but spend money, it's going to raise the deficit and the national debt, and it depends on who's in power. If the left is in power, then you know the spending that they're doing is good, and when the right's in power, the spending that they're doing is good. So it's too bad they didn't have to manage their finances like we have to manage our financing. Hey, you don't spend money you don't have, but it doesn't seem to work that way. But the lower individual income tax rates, I think, is a good thing because when you give people back their own money, it allows them to spend more. And when people spend money, that grows the economy. And we're definitely seeing, and I think I was looking up a stat earlier today where the sale of one home adds $113,000 back into the economy. Well, in the last couple of years, the last 3 years, when interest rates increased, you have the economy being stifled because just because we haven't had that many sales. So I think lowering individual tax rates is a good thing. Um, but again, a permanent 20% qualified business income tax deduction, Section 199A, and I'm not a tax person or anything like that, but I think that's good for business. I think what they're trying to do is stimulate businesses to go out there and invest more and give businesses more money so they go out there and grow the economy. I think that's their thought process behind it. But again, you do a video like this and I'm going to get 50% of the people that completely disagree, and that's perfectly okay. Just let's keep it nice in the chat and everything. So thankfully, I'm not like one of these folks that have, you know, 200 people in the chat, but we're after, man, everybody in the chat is really, really, really nice. So, all right. Hey, that's my wife. So, hi, Angela. Okay. Um, let's see here. Leslie G says, hi, I may be going out on a limb, but if the threshold for PMI was lowered to 10%, might allow more folks to buy if they didn't have to cover PMI private mortgage insurance with appreciation. Maybe 10% would not be unreasonable. Um, yeah, I mean, and if I understand your comment, Leslie, part of the problem is we've had, such, an appreciation of 10% a year on a home prices is just not sustainable. So, um, you know, and then PMI used to be not so outrageous. They've lowered it some. They're trying to help folks, but and I think now it's deductible now. But I mean, when after the great financial crisis, then PMI just went off the uh, increased because there had so many foreclosures and that sort of thing. So they had to increase that. But uh, you know, um, yeah, I mean, hopefully prices stay flat, and it would be nice if wages increased. That way, eventually, we can work our way out of this. But unfortunately, I think it's just going to take some time here. So, Clark says maybe give incentives to builders and hopefully help them build more affordable homes. And I think there's actually some of that in here, to where they're trying to uh, give incentives for builders to build affordable housing, because otherwise what happens is, builders want to build homes to make the most amount of money, and they're going to build those larger homes. So they're trying, I think there's something in the bill. Now, here's the thing, Clark, is it enough? That's going to be the other thing too. And then anytime you have one great big bill and things like that, in order to get people to sign, keep adding things to it in order to get so and so to sign off about it. So, um, you know, um, let's see here. And then Clark says maybe put a cap limit on property taxes. Yeah, um, yeah. There's some, like in Nebraska, if you're a veteran and you're 100% disabled, then there's some there's some property tax relief. We've had the governor in our state just passed a little bit of property tax relief, but those property taxes are used to fund the schools, and everybody wants good schools. So then, hey, um, and you got to maintain those schools. Those are great big buildings. You got to maintain them, and then people want to pay teachers well, and so all of that has to come from somewhere. So, could we um, be more, if efficient and things like that, and not waste as much money? Absolutely. So, all right, let's see. I agree about property taxes. If you own your home, you have to keep paying more and more. Yeah. I mean, you never really own your home because there's always going to be taxes um, and maintenance. So, you know, you can pay your home, but you're never free without paying your property taxes. Now, there's also um, homestead exemption for elderly based on income limits and that sort of thing. So, um, yeah. Let's see. Also, look into the school districts and cap how much they can take out via property taxes. Yeah. And then here's the other thing, too. You got certain, some school districts are in wealthier neighborhoods. You know, um, there's a balance there because you have to, um, if you have a neighborhood with lower income homes, that's not going to generate as much tax revenue and things like that. So there's some issues there. All right. Hey, MH08 is in the house. Was home on time, then computer issues starting at the beginning at second speed. Okay. All right. Terrific. Um, our our Nebraska property tax is going back to normal levels for 2025. Um, I hope I mean, when you say normal levels, I mean, they've went down a little bit, but I don't know if our property taxes are ever normal because we have one of the higher property tax states. Okay. Um, but I'm not sure if I answered your question, Matt. I don't know if, and there's a little bit when they passed that property tax relief, because we pay them in arrears, they had to do another little bill to fix that. I'm not quite sure how they did that, but if that answers your question. Okay. Um, how do we get on the level of some other countries who don't have to pay property taxes? But I don't want to go down the rabbit hole with these taxes. Um, yeah, Yeah, I don't know how I don't know. I don't know, Clark. I don't yeah, that's great. Yeah, I don't know how they I don't know how they do it, you know. Now here's the thing too. I think they have that value added tax, so I think they have a tax on consumption. I think that's how they do it in Europe, but I'm not sure. I've never been to Europe and I've never been taxed in Europe. I'd like to go to Europe, but um yeah. Uh, let's see. MOH says still don't remember that question at Clark. Okay. And then James says, if interest rates come down, do you think selling of homes would increase? I do, James. I do. And that's kind of, there's an argument between President Trump and Jerome Powell because he wants the Fed to lower the Fed funds rate. And there's a little bit of going back and forth with that. Um, so I think it would. I think there's a lot of people right now who are frozen because they would like to sell, but and I think it would increase affordability. So I think it would actually stimulate things, and you would see more sales because when they increased interest rates, that turned off the spigot in terms of home sales. Okay, so all right, David B. Let's see here. Says, and I don't have a, oh, what do they call it? A producer. So sometimes I bring up a comment. And hopefully, everybody's. I feel like the same people who complain about how much schools are taking out in taxes, the same people who keep voting for the school bonds, and that's, you know, um, there's probably some truth to that. So, and I think Bennington was trying to pass a bond, and it, I don't I probably need to keep better track local tabs of things like that. But, um, you know, uh, yeah, I'm not sure. Okay. Let's see what MOH is in Denver. In Denver, it not a tax increase the voters, not a tax increase the voters don't like. Okay. All right. Let's jump back into the article. A permanent 20% qualified business income deduction. We talked about that. A 5-year fourfold increase moving from $10,000 to $40,000 to the state and local SALT tax deduction cap beginning in 2025. Okay. And that is probably one of those things that you see in the states that are, and that's how they get people on board, to say, hey, if you want me to vote for this thing, then you got to throw in that SALT deduction. So, and that's for states like New Jersey, New York, California, those um, the states with high income that they also tax, they have a state income tax. From my understanding, what they can do is, let's say the state taxes, the state income tax took out $20,000 for state taxes. Well, then they allow you to deduct $20,000 off of your federal tax. I think that's how that operates. But that's probably one of those things. A state like Nebraska, um, we're not going to be a fan of that doesn't affect us as much it would somebody in New Jersey, but here's the deal. There's something in it for everyone, supposedly, continued protection for a business SALT deduction and 1031 like kind exchanges. And that's really important. And here's the thing too. People think, well, that's for investors. That's not really helping, um, the folks that are renters. But here's the thing. If you don't have landlords and if you don't have landlords creating, um, housing for people that are renting, then what is that going to do to rents? So, um, what a 1031 exchange is, it's a way to defer taxes. So let's say I had a rental and I wanted to sell that rental. Well, I could do what they call a 1031 exchange. I can sell that rental. Now, there's a whole bunch of rules involved with it. I'm just giving you the live stream nutshell version of this, but you can sell that rental. Okay. And instead of paying capital gains, you can roll it into a like kind property. So it has to be investment property for investment property. And this is for investment property. It's not for your principal residence. But that gives investors the ability to um, keep investing in properties, okay, instead of just, because a lot of folks are going to be like, well, hey, I'm afraid of selling because I don't want to pay capital gains on that property. But a 1031 allows you to exchange that for another investment property. So it's a good thing, and it benefits. It does benefit um, investors, but it also gives more housing out there. So I think that's a good thing, and that's something that was been on the chopping block the past couple of years, because folks kind of feel about, well, hey, why do we, who cares about a landlord? Don't they have enough money already? So there's been that kind of sentiment, but the 1031 is a good thing. Okay. And again, here's the deal too. I'm not without my bias, because hey, I was a landlord myself, so I get it. Okay. But okay, a permanent extension to the mortgage interest deduction. And that's a good thing for folks too, to be able to deduct mortgage interest deduction. Okay, these provisions form the backbone of the real estate economy, from supporting first-time and first-generation buyers to strengthening an investment in housing supply and protecting existing homeowners. McGann said the bill reflects what happens when realtors work together and educate. And there's a little bit of propaganda there to educate lawmakers and advocate for policies that benefit every American, which is true. Um, Major changes under the big beautiful bill. There's that SALT deduction. Okay, it was $10,000 before 2017. You could deduct all of it, and then Trump instituted this in 2017, and that didn't go over well with the states like California and that sort of thing. So then the child tax credit, that went up $200. So from my understanding, the way that works is, let's say your tax bill was, and I'm just making up a tax bill here, okay, was $2,000. That's what you owed on your taxes. Now, obviously, I take my taxes to an accountant, but uh, the way that tax credit works is, if you had a child under 17, then if you had a $2,000, or let's just say a $10,000 tax bill, then you'd only pay 8,000, because you'd get a credit for a child under the age of 17. So um, I've sold a rental property before and didn't do a 1031 exchange, and let me tell you, that can be a hefty tax when you pay capital gains on it. So I had my reasons why I didn't want to do a 1031 exchange, but that's for another video and another live stream. Okay, the standard deduction, what was it before? 15,000, and then it went to 15,750, and then the standard deduction married 30,000 and 31,500. So okay. And SALT cap changes will be welcome news to owners or purchasers of property in areas where real estate taxes, even on run-of-the-mill properties, often exceed $10,000 a year, said Marty Green, principal law firm at Polonsky Badel Green. However, taxpayers with adjusted gross income of 600,000 or more will not benefit from the SALT tax changes, as the benefit phases out 30% for each dollar adjusted gross income of over $500,000. So the folks that are making a whole bunch of money, um, they're saying, hey, you can still pay it. Okay. On the other side of the equation, though, is whether interest rates increase due to the perception that the bill will cause federal deficits to expand unacceptably. Okay. Broader impacts. Okay, beyond core housing issues, the bill includes several additional tax provisions with implications for the real estate and broader business communities. These include permanent improvements to the low income housing tax credit. And Clark, I think that's where they're talking about for folks that incentivizing builders to build more affordable housing. That's what that means for that. Because if you got to build housing for folks, otherwise, uh, give the folks on the low income side, you know, if there's not housing out there, then that's just going to keep rents even more unaffordable. They talked about the $2,200 tax credit indexed to inflation, a permanent 15 million estate and gift tax threshold. That's probably put in there for states that are, if somebody owns a family farm, that's probably um, put in for that. Full expenses for research and development, bonus depreciation, okay, and then immediate expensing for industrial structures and expanded opportunity zone incentives aimed at driving economic development including in rural areas. So that's something that Nebraskans would benefit from. The legislation, I think this is kind of interesting here where it says the legislation also establishes a new baby bond program, providing a one-time $1,000 government contribution for every child born after the law takes in effect. So if you have a baby, I guess you get a little $1,000 bond. Okay, so the funds are intended to help future generations build long-term wealth, including saving for a first home. So that's good. NAR pointed out to polling data it commissioned in the final stages of the legislative process to help persuade lawmakers of the bill's public support. According to the trade group, several provisions have had high levels of approval. And then here's where they talk about the savings accounts for first-time home buyers that had a 92% approval rating. Preserving the mortgage interest deduction, that was 91% people like that. Lower income tax rates, that had 86%, which kind of surprises me. I thought there'd be a higher approval for that. 20% small business contractor deduction, 83%, and then increasing SALT deduction limits. I think that would depend on where they took the survey. So Clark has a question here. What do you think overall this bill could bring to the real estate industry, good or bad? Um, Overall, I think it's good. Um, is there going to be things in the bill that nobody likes? Sure, and that sort of thing. But I think overall, now if they didn't pass this thing, we would have been faced with a tax increase. Okay, and here's the thing too. They're pretty crafty about anybody whenever they do these bills. They pass them so when they end, it's an election year, and then it's like, okay, they're using it as some sort of a lever to say, well, if you don't vote for us, then hey, your taxes are going to go up, and if you vote for the other guy, then they're voting to increase your taxes. At some point, we actually have to um, balance the budget of some sort. I mean, at some point, you can't just, at some point, and I don't know when this is going to occur, but there's going to be a point to where, I know that, when you talk about, raising Social Security age and means testing for Social Security and things like that. If you just mention the word Social Security, people go crazy. Or, entitlements. At some point, and this is the world according to David, at some point you have to really look at some of these programs and really say, hey, do we can't just keep borrowing money um, forever. I mean, what is is it $37 trillion is our national debt? I mean, at some point, you know, that's going to come due, isn't it? But I don't know. I mean, uh, but if they didn't pass it, then it would have been a tax increase, and then, um, that's not good either. And that there's a point to where if you increase, everybody wants to increase taxes, but if you increase taxes to at some point, if you increase taxes at 100%, what's the incentive? There's no incentive to work. Why would you work if the government's taking all of your money? Okay. Um, and there's no, if you have zero taxes, then the government has no revenue for, schools and, you know, police and the military and things like that. So there's got to be a certain number that, um, and there's a guy by the name of Art Laffer in the 1970s. They talked about because the Democrats on this feel that, okay, we're giving these tax breaks to folks, and that's going to cause the deficit to increase, which that could be true. But at some point, there's a school of thought that says, hey, you can actually increase revenue by decreasing taxes. It's called a Laffer curve. And, so there's a magic number somewhere. And the argument is probably what's that magic number where you increase revenue? Because I mean, nobody's opposed to increasing revenue. I mean, that only makes things, but if you increase revenue to the point where people don't have the incentive to work, then you've just, you know, uh, so I don't know. That's, let's see. MOH says, nice that the government has figured out a way to maximize our taxes. Yeah. I mean, it's, yeah, no, I don't know. I don't know. But the National Association, I mean, if somebody's going to pass a bill, you know, if something's going to be passed, you want to again have a say in what's being passed. No fan of the Laffer curve. Okay, okay. Well, hey, at some point there's got to be a happy point to where you actually, you know, lower the taxes to where it does raise revenue because it's generating more economic activity. So I don't know. Uh, that's kind of the scoop on that. I thought we'd go over another. Um, let's see here. Let's see here. Um, we'll go over another article here. Bad news for mortgage rates. Trump's trade war has started to drive up inflation. And this just came out today, where the overall inflation jumped to 2.7% in June. Okay. And just to kind of show you where we're at, you know, this is looking back 5 years, and you can see um, right before uh, January 2021, everybody remember how inflation took off right after COVID. And remember, we were told that it was transitory. Well, that turned out to be a lie. But, inflation has come down. But looking at it from over the last year, in April, it was at 2.3%. And then in, you know, the April inflation rate is looking at March numbers. Okay. That's not, and then look what happened. Remember when we did the Liberation Day and the tariff thing? But I'm not a fan of tariffs, just myself. Um, because what happens, um, that gets passed along to the consumer. When you impose a tariff on China or whoever, it gets passed along to the consumer. The consumer pays that. China doesn't pay that. Okay. Um, yeah, MOH says $1 trillion in tariffs will result in an additional 3% or so in overall prices for goods overall, and that's correct. you know, the government fills their coffers because it's being filled by the consumer. It's a tax on the consumer. Okay. And yeah, I agree. And now is this a reflection of those tariffs? I don't know, but w- you know, we'll go back to the article. All right. Oh, let me share the right tab. Okay. Um, Consumers had dodged an inflationary impact of the trade war initiated by President Trump this year, but that's starting to change. According to the monthly report from the U.S. Bureau of Labor and Statistics, BLS, the consumer price index for June rose 2.7% year over year and 0.3% on a monthly basis. The annual pace is higher than the 2.4% registered in May. Core inflation, which removes volatile food and energy costs, rose 2.9% annually. The rise in shelter costs continues to cool, registering a 3.8% year over year. The pace of inflation for shelter has decreased every month since August of 2024. The report is a blow to the real estate industry, which has been choked by high mortgage rates. Federal Reserve Chairman Jerome Powell has taken a cautious approach to an interest rate cut, often citing the potential for Trump's tariffs to reignite inflation. So there's going to be a battle between Powell and President Trump on that. And then here is all items for less food and energy. And then this is shelter. Okay. Um, Today's inflation report is not good news for the housing market, said Bright MLS economist Lisa Sturvant in a statement. While the headline inflation number gets most of the attention, it is the price data for specific sectors that will give an indication that the tariffs and announcements about tariffs are having an impact on inflation. Prices of household furnishings and appliances, toys, and computers were up sharply in June, and apparel prices also rose faster than average. A Fed rate cut is now very unlikely in July, and prospective home buyers are increasingly feeling financial stress of higher prices for everyday things, which makes it harder to think about buying a house. And that's 100% true. Okay. Um, let's see. We got some Okay, free resume says, "Hi David, I'm glad I finally catch one of your live videos. The tariffs are a negotiating tool, and I get it. If we can get a better deal out of it, hey, that's great. But it's like, hey, at some point we need to, um, get a deal. So hopefully, hey, that would be wonderful if we can get a deal out of it. And it's got to be, um, you know, a, f- a f- um, a deal that's workable. You can't have some of these countries ripping us off and sort of thing. And if it brings some things back to the United States, that's good. Free resume says not worried about the tariffs at all. Okay. Um, oh, it's us. Well, I got to star that comment. All right, terrific. Okay, thanks. All right. Um, let's see, Sagent CEO Gino Palazzo. It would be nice if they had easier names in some of the things. Said in a statement, June core CPI rose less than expected for the fifth straight month, which may lower rates and provide refi retention opportunities for mortgage servicers short term. But Sagent must keep services ready for any market outcome because rates can rise just as quickly in a volatile era. Plus, homeowner hardships could emerge during hurricane season the coming months. We're always going to have some crazy weather, that's for sure. News on potential tariffs had slowly died down during Trump's paused global tariff regime, and he announced on April 2nd, but he revived the issue with a series of announcements that have put the economy back on edge. It seems like right after they passed the bill, then here comes the tariff talk again. Okay, and everybody's going to have a different feeling about that. There's going to be some folks that hey, they're not worried about it. And, you know, in July, a number of countries were targeted for new and very high tariffs. Those include Russia, Canada, Mexico, European Union, Japan, South Korea, South Africa, Myanmar, Laos, Kazakhstan, and Malaysia. Trump also singled out some imported goods, including a 50% tariff on imported copper. It'd be kind of interesting to see what the global tariffs announced on April 2nd will remain paused until August 1st. So we'll see if they can swing some deals in there before then. Powell's wait and see approach to rate cuts has frustrated Trump, who has levered a series of threats against him and called for his resignation. Powell has also given no signal that he's considering resigning. Okay, so and I think his term expires next month. I don't think we need to worry about tariffs as much as we need to worry about Jerome Powell lowering the interest rates, and that's the thing too. People want interest rates to come down, but again, they had to raise rates in order to crush inflation, and so it's six or half dozen with that. So yeah, I mean, I get it. All right, let's take a look at let's see this. Oh, here's the price of lumber. Okay, so the price of lumber, let's go back. Let me I forget to share the tab with you guys. Sorry about that. This is the 1 year price of lumber. Okay. And what's kind of interesting is how lumber dropped right at April 2nd, which is kind of interesting because lumber dropped because I don't know for sure, but I think that what they're saying is, okay, it's going to decrease demand for lumber because they'll build less houses. So it's kind of interesting to see how it dropped. And then if you go back 5 years, and then here's during the COVID, when lumber spiked to $1,600 for 1,000 board feet, which is crazy, and then since then it's settled down. But it'll be interesting to see how that pans out. Okay. This right here is the current mortgage interest rates, and the blue one is conforming, and it's currently at 6.88. And then this is again from Housing Wire, and then FHA is at 6.57. Okay. And if you go back, I'll show you this one here. This one here, share this tab. This is from Mortgage News Daily. I like this graph here. It's 6.85 for a 30-year fixed rate mortgage. And then go back 5 years and look at this. This is just crazy. Back in 2021, when interest rates were, 2%. I mean, gee whiz, that's free money. I mean, that's just crazy. And then boom, it went up like crazy. And now it's between 6 and 7%. And then we'll take a look at the InfoSparks. I love these graphs here. We'll look at I'll show you closed sales. Okay, this is the Omaha area region. Okay, and then we'll look at a line graph and go back a rolling 12 months to take out seasonality. And let's go back 10 years. Okay, this is showing you where sales were in the Omaha area region at, in 2021, 2022, during that time when interest rates were so low. Look at how many sales were occurring. At 15,000, and this is on a 12-month rolling average. And, 15,000 sales. And then after when they raised rates, look what that did to the number of sales. The sales just uh, bottomed out. And so now we're below 12,000 sales. And that's even, now this we've even had more population growth since then. But if you go back to 2017, we were 14,000 sales. But as MOH says, mortgage rates were low for a long time. I refied at 3.3 back in 2015. They were so low for so long, we just got spoiled with that. So congratulations, MOH, on that. It's yeah, and this is going back. This is going back to 2020. Let's go back. Let's see what it says for a max. This goes back to 1980. Okay. Oh, let me share the right tab. Okay. If you look in, see, I don't know if I can make that any bigger for you guys, but 2017, 4%, just like MOH said, he was at 3.3% in 2015, 4%. It was, everybody got so used to that. And then when rates went down to 3% and 2%, you knew that wasn't going to last. And then in my mind at the time, I'm like, wow, somebody buys a home at 2.5%. Who is going to want to sell their home, if rates go up? And yeah, that's, as Clark says, yes, they've been low for a while. Yep, absolutely. And low interest rates, that makes things affordable. So it was, like I said, I had, before the COVID, 2019, I had a 23-year-old buy a brand new 3-bedroom, 2-bath, 2-car garage, entry level, split entry home, about 1,400 finished square feet, for $192,000. And now there's no way on the planet anything $192,000 is rough, So, yeah, I mean, let's see. Davis got into an incredible home with a VA assumable loan. Yes, you did, and far better than the current 6.5%. Absolutely, yes. And that's the thing, folks, is there's a thing called a VA loan is an assumable loan. So you can, now the problem here's, for every gimme, there's a gotcha. The problem with assuming a loan is you have to cover the difference from the loan amount to the value of the current home. So you have to have cash in order to assume a loan. Yeah, I mean, I think, yeah, if assumable loans are a great thing. So I mean, if you can, but you got to have it's. Now, if they could change up a rule somehow, if they could change up that where more loans were assumable somehow, or if they had some sort of a program to where, let's say, you could assume a loan, but then you could still finance the difference somehow, that would mean, but here's the deal too. What's the unintended consequence of that? Now it's, yeah, but I mean, I think an assumable loan is crazy. I got another buyer right now that's working on an assumable loan, and it's, hopefully we're closing here in August, and they got a, even better rate than that, believe it or not, free resume. They, it's crazy. So yeah, they were all over it. So yeah, that's a great, as long as people, and you don't have to be a veteran to assume a VA assumable loan. Okay. You don't have to be a veteran. So, yeah, that's a great thing, that's awesome. Well, thank you, Clark. I appreciate that. Let's say when the rates bottomed out during COVID, I didn't refi because the closing costs were more than the savings on the interest. Yep, exactly. Yep. Um, let's see. Assumables were popular in the 1970s, but then there were a lot more homes under $40,000. Yeah, that's hard to believe. Yeah, I mean, I bought a couple rentals. I mean, that's and this is going to make folks go crazy, but you could have a home in a, now you think of a $40,000 home, and you're like, whoa, that thing must be a fire damaged or something. But um, back in the 90s, you know, uh, 40,000 probably in Denver, and 40,000 that bought you a pretty nice home. Okay. Um, yeah, the veteran has the loan loses part of his VAL benefits, though the buyer isn't a veteran. Yeah, that's true. But if it's a veteran and a veteran, they release their eligibility, then that's even better. Early 90s. Okay, yep. Early 90s, you could buy a nice home for 40,000. Yeah, yeah. It's like I look back and I'm like, I should have bought more. Um, you know, but here's the thing too. Today's $300,000 home in Omaha, 10 years from now, are we going to go back and say, oh, I should have bought 100 of those things? And maybe not 100, but I should have bought 5 of those things, because now they're, you know, 1.2 million, or whatever. So, which I don't know how folks in some of those markets, you know, I think unaffordability is a challenge in our market. But I think it's about some of these other markets, and I'm like, holy smokes, how on earth do they afford a home in those markets? And folks have to be able to get on the rung of home ownership in order to gain that equity. But if people never get on the rung of home ownership, those folks are just left behind. And yeah, if people can get on that rung of home ownership, is the key, because then they start gaining equity. But yeah, and I don't know how you fix that. I don't know how you fix that. Okay. Before the Californians came. Yep, probably so. Okay. Um, yeah, we'll want to show you this here, and then we'll come back to this tab here. But I wanted to show you how the number of sales has decreased, and you see that across the country and things like that. And then let's look at closed prices. This is the median closed price going back 10 years. In January of 2015, the median closed sales price in Omaha was 155,000. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yep, yep, yep. It's a far different place from California, isn't it? Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yep. Um, couldn't be happier we left. Well, yeah, that's good. I'm glad you're happy. Yep. Yep. That's awesome. Um, I sympathize with Californians. They didn't want to leave, but got forced out by high housing prices back home. I agree. I don't know how they people can afford a home out there. So anyway, I wanted to just share that with you guys. Talk a little bit about the big beautiful bill. I always appreciate when folks stop in and let's see. Oh, it's much more than high housing costs. Yeah, I can believe that. Yeah, no, most definitely. Unfortunately, it's such a beautiful state, and then they uh, are running it into the ground, in my opinion. So it's like, everything's unaffordable, and then it's just not, and but everything works its way from the coast inward. So, um, yep, these days. Yep, exactly. All right, gang. Well, I tell you what, we're coming up on an hour. I really appreciate everybody hanging out in the chat, and it's a lot of fun, and uh, appreciate everybody stopping in. Okay, let's see. Denver's no garden spot either. Um, no garden spot anymore either. Yeah, no, it's um, yep. And then love the big beautiful bill. It's still fluid though. Let's see how new policies play out. Exactly. So yeah, that's Absolutely true. Yep. And then Clark, great show. Thank you. Thank you, Clark. I always appreciate stopping in. All right. And then free resume. Sorry, I caught only the tail end. No, that's perfectly okay. Appreciate you guys stopping by. And let's see here. And I appreciate everybody stopping in tonight. And we're starting to get more people on the live stream. So, anyway, if you have any ideas or anything, drop them in the comment section and that sort of thing. And hopefully, this was an all right and you enjoyed things. But I appreciate everybody stopping in, and we'll see you next week. Bye bye.